Welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. Dive deep into humane leadership crafted for today's fast-paced business world. Listen to our podcast on all major streaming platforms and join us as we explore the essence of humane leadership in today's dynamic business landscape. I'm Chris Olerking, a Fortune 100 IT leader, alongside Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader. Today, we're switching things up. I'm going to be sharing a personal story about how a significant disappointment I faced in my professional career and how I navigated through it and ultimately moved forward into new opportunities. So thank you for joining us. Good morning, Roberto. How you doing?
Morning, Chris. I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing great. And so I wanted to, share with people a little bit how who I feel as a humane leader, moved through my career and dealt with some professional setbacks. And in this case, it was about 25 years into my career. I had worked at the same company, and I ended up working at the same company the whole time, not to spoil the ending, but this was a stage where I had moved around into other corporate areas away from the original company I started with, the subdivision I had started with. And they had posted a leader for the IT leader of that whole division. And I really felt that by moving into these other areas of the company, I had gained some rather unique experiences. Both I had, a lot of time working with this subdivision and then had a corporate experience and other separate divisions experience. And I thought, boy, I am uniquely suited for this role. And I interviewed for it and I thought I did really well. Unfortunately, when they came to me and said, Chris, you're one of our top candidates, certainly the top internal candidate. Everybody loved you. You're the only candidate that every single person on the panel wanted to hire. However, we decided we need to bring in somebody from the outside with a different perspective. Oh. So while I was the best candidate and everybody wanted to work with me, we're not going to give you the job. And I'll tell you, my soul was crushed. I was still a young man, another 10 or 15 years likely on my career horizon. I thought this was going to be the dream opportunity. They don't come up that often. Typically, the leaders in this particular role, 10, 15 years was quite common in the past for people to keep that role. So I knew timing-wise, it just probably wasn't going to come around again. And I'll tell you, it really was probably one of the lowest points of my career. Short of when we got bought out and a lot of my friends got laid off, this was the lowest personal level in my career. And I'll tell you, it is tough to take news like that and be a professional. It really is.
That must have hurt badly. Was that a VP level or what level was that?
At that time it was not. It had been in the past. They were posting it as a senior director, which is in our company was one level below the vice president. It likely would become one in the future. It did, I believe, as of today, 30 years later. I believe it is a VP role today. And really for me, it was almost harder when they said, everybody internally loved you. You were the only candidate that every single panelist wanted to hire. And I'm like, how in the world do you go from a unanimous decision, except for we want to go to the outside? It crushed me. And the hardest part was I was going to have to, in my corporate role that I was currently in, I was going to have to work with this person. Now, fortunately, as I got to work with him, he was a great guy and we got along great. And he only stayed about 6 years because, again, the internal politics of the company is brutal. What they wanted out of the role, I personally don't think I could have done any better than him. It was an uphill battle. The expectations of things that they wanted to fight the corporate processes and do things their own way. And maybe I could have convinced them that that was a folly and that would never happen. So maybe I could have done that better. But, ultimately, you're dealing you have to put your emotions aside. You have to, you can go home and be sad about it for a while and pound rocks and hit boards, pound nails, whatever you do, work out really hard to get your frustration over with. And I'll tell you, it took quite a while to let it go completely, let's say. The first week really grumpy because the new person isn't going to start in the role for a couple of weeks because they got to give notice and start. So, I mean, I had enough time to be very over it professionally in the office when the new guy started and could shake his hand and meet in his office and introduce him to people and help him be successful. That's always kind of a brutal part too, when you're hoping for a role and then as part of your role, you got to help them be successful. But he turned out to be a really nice guy too, which made it easy for me. Very competent, very professional. If they had ended up hiring somebody from the outside that was terrible and unqualified and lousy, I probably wouldn't have gotten it over it as easily, right? So when someone comes in and you're like, you know what, this guy's a pretty good guy, and you know what, this guy knows what he's doing, and unfortunately, he got too frustrated with how our corporate bureaucracy worked, and which was one of my points actually in the interview. In the interview to the panels, I'm like, why do you think we should hire you versus an outside person? And I'm like, in my experience, when I've seen a lot of people come in from the outside and not stay here very long, they can't navigate, even though there's documented processes and, they tout, that we all follow a uniform process and everything. The reality is it don't work that way. Yeah, you follow it, but a lot of it is your success. A lot of it hinges on how quickly you can go through those processes. You go through those processes faster when you know the right people to talk to, the right way to explain what you're trying to accomplish, all those kinds of things. And I think from that perspective, I could have done better in getting some of the things that they wanted because I had the contacts, had the relationships, and knew how the processes really worked and could get things through. But the opportunity never came up again while I was there. The timing for my career just wasn't right to try and go back and do it a second time. And ultimately, I mean, it did work out. I ended up working there another 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, but I think I have spotted why they didn't give you the job. And before I give you this, my opinion, it is, okay, you handled for frustration. And I think that frustration was really high when they gave you the bad news. And it was directed to tell you that you were going to obtain that position. When they say, you were the guy with the highest grades and everybody wanted to work with you. That specific phrase was meant to say, okay, but you didn't have the job, but you're an amazing guy. That's the sandwich method that I use. But good stuff, bad stuff, good stuff, and to do it this way. But I think I understand why they didn't give you the position. And it was when they asked you, what would you do if you were hired? You focus directly on the internal problems, not in how to grow the business. What would you do in my position? Okay, if you say about all the bad stuff within the company, it is not something they would like, or they would hire someone to do that, because you're living in the constant pain of doing that, of avoiding, not avoiding, of hitting a wall that it is meant to be hit. The thing is, what would you do to make this business grow? And probably the other candidate answered that. Okay, I would do this. I will increase revenue. I will maximize profit. I would maybe take a change to the culture, something directly to the business, so the business will thrive and strive. If you focus directly on the problems that are currently on a daily basis, but it will keep going, but not in the outer layer in which is directly to the business, you're tend to fail. Do you agree?
Yeah, you know, obviously the external candidate can have a much more optimistic perspective and focus much more on business opportunities because they hadn't felt the, shall we say, the obstacles that they were going to face, without a doubt, without a doubt. And he was a very good business-minded person also. So, I mean, it was an IT role, but he absolutely was a very business-minded person and was very interested in learning how, you know, UOP made money. You know, we were a very complex company in terms of what the science is of our product, right? So you have to be a very technical, inquisitive kind of person to understand the chemical engineering and how the business works. But ultimately, it's like any other business. How do you maximize profit? How do you reduce selling costs? How do you seal more deals faster? How do you keep your customers returning? All those kinds of things. We actually stayed in touch after he left and went to a different company. And he talked about what kinds of things that he was doing there. We probably had 3 or 4 lunches after he had left, and it was still a lot of the same things without the barrier of a corporate umbrella that won't let you do whatever you want. And ultimately, that's what made him more successful externally. Was, you know, he had a lot of great ideas. He had a lot of things that could help the business. But the reality was that unless it was aligned with exactly how the big umbrella of the company wanted to do it, in your division, you were never going to do those things unless it was completely aligned with the top level. And that's unfortunate that someone couldn't teach him that better. And that was the understanding I had applying for the role, is knowing that, look, I can do things for the company to help the business be successful. But our division, because we hadn't been acquired that long, I think it was maybe only 8 or 9 years that we'd been inside and under the umbrella of the company, they still felt that they could do what they wanted. We're so important, we can do what we want, and we can ignore that. And the reality is you can't. As much as you want to interview and say, I'm going to bring good business ideas and all that, that's wonderful, and you need to do that. But you need to do it inside the framework that the corporate environment's going to let you, or you will not be allowed to do anything. And that's what happened. And he got too frustrated with that. You know, he was a great guy, but just, you know, hey, I got these solutions. Yes. And if you were running only this division, that would be great. But in the big umbrella of things, it doesn't fit in with everything else that's going on. So you're going to get denied, and you're going to fight uphill the whole time. And ultimately, that's part of the reason why he left, was he's just, I cannot get things done, you know, against that. So again, great guy. You know, he figured out where he fit best too. And I did also, you know, I mean, I moved on and realized that part of my value was working in roles where I knew what the big overlying picture was, and I have to be able to communicate to the business. Right. I understand the problem you're trying to solve, but you're trying to solve it with a screwdriver, and we really need to be using a wrench, because our leadership has decided we're a wrench strategy, so we're using wrenches. And I know you want to solve it, and solving it better for you personally, and you're part of the business. Screwdriver's better, but I can get you a wrench in a week, and if you try to do the screwdriver, we're going to be messing around this 3 years. And the answer is still going to be no.
Yeah. One thing that I'm seeing here is that after that you learn, and I don't mean that you haven't learned before, but you learn more about how about the business, no? Because you mentioned that you change not the business landscape because it is really difficult to change in that huge company, but you change your mindset towards the business to be, you were a tactical and operational guy, okay, who was really great about that. But switching your mindset to a further layer, an above layer, in which you could talk about more business solutions, you were evolving as someone who could be at that higher level, maybe senior director or VP or further above, because in the end, that is what we want when we hire someone. To think, to have all this thinking about business, to just live with the business and provide solutions of the business in that specific frame, as you mentioned, that division, don't go that. Maybe that guy that was hired before spotted the problems of that division because it was something related to another division. But since he couldn't make those changes, that's why he got frustrated and he left, right?
Yep. Oh, exactly. And, I think we all go through growth periods, right? We learn over our entire career when we're 18, when we're 22, when we're 25, when we're 30, when we're 65. And hopefully we still learn things when we're 70 and reflect back on it and share some of that. I mean, that's part of what we do in this podcast, right? Is just share that. And I think for me, that was a pivotal moment to realize, again, to reassess what's my value, what am I providing, what am I doing that they're paying me for? And, it was becoming less and less that technical knowledge. Because when I first started, it was all about technical knowledge. Get a solution, get it implemented, get the business using it. It was very tactical. Then I did a period in corporate where it was much more strategic and it was multi-year plans, 4, 5, sometimes even 8-year plans. But ultimately, this pivot moment where I didn't get this role was realizing that, yeah, there are going to be some times when you might believe, or the company may even say you're a great fit, but we want a different perspective. You can't have that different perspective because of what you experienced in your past. So you move on and you say, what do I want to do different in my career? And hey, for me, I knew this opportunity was unlikely to ever come up again because usually people stayed in it much longer. And unfortunately, when he left after a couple of years, where I was in my career wasn't a time to do a U-turn and come back. But I personally grew enough to realize that I probably don't want that role at this stage in my career. And when it came up again, I didn't even apply because it just wasn't the right time. A lot of people encouraged me to apply because I had done so well in interviews in the past, and now I had 3 more years or 5 more years of more experience in different areas of the big company. Just wasn't the right time for me. And so I didn't do it, and it never came up again. But you realize, you do that self-analysis and you say, well, what would I do different if it came up again? And if it isn't going to come up again, what do I want to accomplish? And I really wanted to have more experiences where networking, my connections, my people connections, were a much more important part of the role. And those can be hard to find in a big company. Again, because many big companies are very process related, they treat a lot of roles that are just like cogs in the wheel. You get some input, you do your thing, you push it along in the process. So, but I realized it was really the thing I was looking for in that role, and what I wanted to look for going forward in future roles was roles that had more personal networking, right? I didn't want a job that was purely technical facts, that it was purely implementing solutions. I wanted it to have this aspect of let's call it IT marketing, where your personal experiences and your personal relationships with the business people helped you be both of you to be more successful. And so I actually stopped applying for most of the, like technical roles and looked for more roles that were around the relationships with the different areas of the business, and ultimately, did pretty well, until I retired.
Nice. Um, I've got one question. Well, first of all, let me tell you that when you see only the business from within and not from the outside, you're biased regarding what's going on because you listen to all these firings that they're having. You're thinking only with a specific set of a view of what's going on. But when you see the business from the outside, which is a really good exercise that could be done, even though if you're working at a company, you see something different. You see, okay, this company, let me tell you, I think Honeywell has, it is in the stock market. If it
Yes.
is, you could see what's going on and analyze, okay, they say that we're going to hit this bar of revenue or whatever, and they didn't, and why they didn't. And when you begin watching business from the outside, is something that it helps you a lot to fully understand if the business is going good or not. And that's what makes sense when they hire someone from the outside. When you take away your mindset, no, not your mindset, excuse me, your point of view from the inside to the outside, it allows you to gain better positions, and they will see, okay, everybody wants to work with, in this case, with Chris. Chris is amazing, knows the internal politics, but above, understand business, know what's going on, has a particular view of solutions that could fit into this big corporate environment, and to go along with that, and it will pave a path of success for the business. So I think any internal guy who has also a external mindset or point of view to take the position much faster.
Without a doubt. And I think if we speak about humane leadership, particularly for the IT people in the audience, the more you can read outside business news, business solutions, business stories, is going to help you significantly. So if you are somebody who is spending a large amount of your career inside a single company, you probably need to redouble your efforts for outside learning, outside reading, learning about what other companies, maybe in the same industry that you're in, what are they doing for solutions? Why is your company not implementing solution X when 3 other competitors that you read about in Business Week magazine or Business News or the Wall Street Journal or something, why are they doing it and you aren't? And study that, because I do believe, it's rare these days to have a career that lasts as long as mine did in a single company, but it is possible. And the way to be most successful in doing that, as I reflect back, is ensure that you're reading enough about the outside world, so to speak, so that when you're interviewing for things, you emphasize that knowledge that you have, that about what, in my case, what is Amoco, BP Amoco doing different than we're doing? What is some of the other, like Jacobs Engineering or some of the other big firms like that? What are they doing that is different than UOP? And bring that to the conversation. I probably, even if I had focused on that entirely in that interview, I wasn't going to win that interview, right? They wanted somebody from the outside. I truly believe that. I think no matter what I would have said in the interviews, I wasn't going to get that role, which is okay. I mean, that's how the business world works. And I think when you reflect back on, you realize, look, life's not fair. One of my early bosses always told me, "Who told you life was fair? Life's not fair. Sometimes things are just not going to go your way." And it was totally my choice to accept that and move on. I could have gotten really mad. Well, I'm quitting and going someplace else out of spite. Ugh. Why? I like the people I work with. I enjoyed what I was doing for a living. The best choice for me was to accept their decision. It was their decision to make. It wasn't the outcome I wanted, but that's okay. And I can move on and find other interesting things to do, which I did for another, again, I think it was almost 15 more years. It all worked out in the end. But that's also having not only a humane leadership perspective, but a very positive outlook on things. Things are going to work out because I'm going to work hard and I'm going to find things that I like to do. And that's what that's what I did.
Okay. I disagree with you. I think you could have landed that job if you weren't so focused about the internal problems, but more about the business. Let's put on, if you have talked about 20% about internal problems, but 80% about business, you have gotten that job. At that time, don't get me wrong, you weren't so mature about business that you were at the future, because you understood. And when you understand about business, it is something that's really good for your career. Let me tell you something that my dad told me. I think it was 15 years ago. I was so focused on IT, really, really so focused, even though I was a CTO, even though I was at that level positions at startups. And he told me, you could have the best operation, the best IT, the best software development. But what really matters is business. When you know about business, you to make the business grow. And to have that, you to have better sales and you to hit the market that you're aiming for and those numbers. If you have the best development team, it won't matter. What you want is for someone to buy your product or your service. That is what matters. So in the end, it doesn't matter that we have proficiency in IT. What matters is that we have proficiency at business. That is something that you must not take for granted. And I would give this advice to any friend of mine. Okay, you're great at this, man. Okay, but you have to be better at business. When you do that, you will rise in the ladder faster, and you will have much better encouragement of what to do rather than sticking only in IT.
I completely agree with you. Absolutely agree. And the things I do in IT now are better than they ever were before. So, again, I think when you take that open mind, you listen to your peers, friends' advice, etc., on when you have these setbacks, you can come out much farther ahead than you would have otherwise, right? Because you're not in it alone. You're in it with your coworkers who are close to you. You're in it with your friends and family. It's, your career is a much bigger thing than just you. And I think when you approach it as a humane leader, you can look at those big pictures and realize there's other ways to be successful. And I much prefer my IT career now that I have. And, a big part of it is the discussions with you too, so ultimately, it's all working out.
Yeah. Well, it was a really nice topic that I think that this should apply for many people. I trust that some people in our audience will. And this topic could be also for startups and many more. So we will talk about this in the future.
Very good. Well, you have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you again next year.
Yeah.
2025 coming up.
Yes, sir. So have an amazing Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to you and your family too. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Bye.